Hi and welcome to the channel. It's getting towards the end of June, so it's time for another rental update. If you've been following along, welcome back, and if you're new, my name is Matt, and we've been renting out a couple RVs through RV Share and Outdoorsy over the last couple of years. And I have a little series on my channel here called Is It Worth It?, where we go over the pros and cons of renting out your RV on these two platforms. In the past couple of years, we've rented out 2 RVs. This year we're down to renting out one, a 2020 Grand Design. It was mid-May when we left off in our last update, and since then we had one more rental in May, and overall it ended up being a good rental. It was a 4-nighter, which is our minimum. They didn't travel very far in the camper, about an hour away. The renter was a local family. They only lived 10 minutes away, which brings me up to something I've mentioned in previous videos. I've noticed a trend that the vast majority of people who rent our campers live probably 10 to 30 minutes away, and they don't take the campers out very far, usually within 2 to 3 hours away. And that was the case with this renter. Started off on a good foot. He was on time, which brings me to another point. We've learned that you really do need to set an appointment with the people coming out. You know, most people are pretty good with that when you tell them, or you arrange it when you arrange a time to pick up. But every once in a while you get a person who will say, well, yeah, I'll just be there in the morning, or I'll be there in the afternoon. We're not a business open 24/7. We do have other things going on in our life. So we really try to make it clear with people coming out that we are doing the pickup at this time. Let us know if you're going to be late or early. So there's always a certain comfort level you get, a vibe, if you will, when a renter comes out. And we got a pretty good vibe off our Memorial Day renter. Number one of your biggest concerns when the RV goes out is what's going to happen when it's on the road. We do require towing experience, but not everybody's level of towing experience is the same, obviously. This renter happened to be a professional truck driver, so we felt like the camper was in good hands there. But on the flip side, there was no RV experience. This was their first time renting an RV. So, you know, there's just so much going on with an RV, obviously, all the different systems, and you just throw so much at them during that walk around. So there's always that expectation that there might be some issues, some questions that might pop up during the rental. And that was the case here, you know, nothing major. Usually, you know, you might get 1 or 2 questions while the camper's out. We got 3 calls on this one, and they were all minor things that we were able to take care of while, you know, just over the phone. You know, they couldn't figure out how to get one of the dinette lights on. They were having trouble lighting the stove. And at one point, they weren't able to use the TV and the air conditioner. It turned out that the breaker on the campsite pedestal had blown. You know, like I said, not big deals, but maybe somebody with some RV experience would have just figured these things out. That being said, something I'm doing this year, I've started a spreadsheet where every time somebody calls with a question, I'm writing it down, and then the most commonly asked questions I'm printing out on a sheet, and I'm going to laminate it and put it on it inside of a cabinet door in the camper. Just a quick reference guide for those commonly asked questions that maybe they could glance at that instead of having to call us while out on the road. Otherwise, they had a great trip and there were no issues with the camper. They brought it back in great condition. It was clean. The tanks were empty. All in all, pretty good. It was brought back on a Monday. We only had a 1-day turnaround as it was going out Tuesday the next day. And that brings me to another question that we get asked a lot. A lot of people will ask, how much work is it to turn that camper around? And in a case like this, where we had a good renter that took care of the camper and brought it back clean, we could do a turnaround in less than an hour. You know, a lot of times you'll have to wash the exterior, some light cleaning on the inside, restock a couple items, and you're good to go. Last year I got the stopwatch out and actually timed myself on a worst case scenario where the camper came back, the exterior was dirty, the interior was dirty, and they did not empty the tanks. Even then, it was only 2 hours from the time they dropped it off to the time I had it all cleaned out, tanks emptied, and it was in the driveway ready to go for the next rental. Part of that is that we live about 1.5 miles away from a dump station. That really helps. So to sum up May, we had 2 rentals. We used it once for personal use. Rentals were $405 each, net profit $810. And then going into June, another 4-night rental that first weekend. We had really good vibe, really good comfort level with these renters. They had experience towing and they rented out RVs before. So they had no issues during their weekend. We didn't get any calls, no text messages, brought it back clean, tanks emptied again. So far up to this point, all the renters have been rock stars. The only problem we had with that rental was one of the drinking hoses busted at the seam. And in the past, I like using those flexible hoses. I've used the 0G, but after about a year, each one of the 0G hoses failed. So then I went with a generic brand off Amazon, but again, after exactly 1 year, one of those busted. So now I'm going back to a more traditional RV hose, and we'll see if that lasts a bit longer. Then the second weekend in June, my wife and I took the camper up to Lake Carlos State Park in northwestern Minnesota. And currently our camper is out on a week-long rental. This situation is not uncommon to other situations that we've seen where somebody owns a lake lot or a cabin and they're having family or friends up and they need extra sleeping space. So that's what our RV is being used for. The only concern we have with rentals like this, most people take them to an RV resort, a campground, and the road in, the campsites are usually trimmed and free of branches that could cause damage to the RV. Not so with private property. Sometimes people are taking the RV and they're parking it out behind the house or in the yard or whatnot. Really the only time we ever encountered damage via scratches on our RV during a rental is in this situation where somebody took it up to a cabin. So we've learned every time we encounter somebody renting in this situation, we make clear, scout out the area where the RV is going to go and look for branches and make sure you're not going to be scratching the sides or the top. The other issue that may come up with a rental like this is power and water management. We were communicating before the rental on what systems would work with what power. You plug into a house, everything is going to work except for the air conditioning. You need 30 amp service for that. And while they did have 220, turns out they didn't have the right plug-in for the campers. So they were going to be okay with the camper as is, but then the forecast showed that we were going to have a couple days at 100 degrees. So they decided to rent our generator, which would power the air conditioning. So that brings up another commonly asked question, and that's, is it worth it to get a generator for RV rentals? And so far I would say yes. So we have a 3400 watt Champion dual fuel inverter generator. Most RVs are going to need a 3400, 3500 watt generator to properly run the air conditioner. We charge $30 a night for it, and it was about $1,100. That was a couple years ago. It might be a little bit more now, I'm not sure. And I haven't done the best at keeping track of how many nights it's been rented out and things like that. But if I had to do a rough guess, I would say it's probably going to take 3 to 4 years to pay that off just using rental money. That being said, I'm still glad I have one, because not only do we use it for rentals, we actually end up using it quite a bit for ourselves. There's been a few times where we've had family use our RV for extra sleeping space in the driveway. And even if we're cleaning the RV on a hot day, we'll plug it into the generator to have air conditioning. And if we ever have a power outage at the house, it's nice to have that backup. So I'm really glad we bought a generator. And if you're going to be renting out your RV, I would strongly suggest getting one, just for those reasons, and for the fact that you open yourself up to more potential renters too. There might be some people that are going to boondock, but they may only rent an RV that comes with a generator. So thumbs up on getting a generator. As far as new things for the camper, a couple minor things. Got some new artwork. We bought a couple storage nets that mount on the wardrobe up by the bed. And then we replaced the foam cushions in the seating area around the dinette. And that made a huge difference. We've noticed that after a couple seasons, the foam was really flattening out in those seats, and it was becoming really uncomfortable to sit for an extended period of time. We found this place that will do custom sized foam inserts. So you just measure your seat cushions, send in the dimensions, and then you get a piece that's ready to go right into the seat cover. It was actually really, really easy to replace and made night and day difference. No problem sitting on those seats now for an extended period of time, watching a 2-hour movie, you don't even notice it. Definitely a worthwhile upgrade. So here's our final numbers for June. We used it for personal use one weekend, and then it was out on 3 rentals for a total net profit of $1,732. That does include a rental at the end of June that wraps into August, but just for general purposes. Looking ahead for the rest of the summer, it's looking pretty positive. July is completely booked out with rentals and personal trips. August is completely booked out except for one weekend. We do have one weekend open, and we already have rentals on the books for September. Otherwise, gas prices are still a concern in the back of my mind. I worry that maybe some people might cancel their vacations with gas costing double than what it was a year ago. But so far we haven't had any cancellations. To summarize how the cancellation policy works with these platforms, in general, if somebody books, they have 48 hours to cancel the booking and get a 100% refund. There are different ways you can set up your cancellation policy. We have ours set at moderate. So what that means is if a renter cancels 7 or more days before the rental begins, they get 75% of their booking back. If they cancel less than 7 days before the rental begins, they get a 50% refund. So there is some incentive to keep your booking after that 48-hour window is closed, but I still worry that there may be some people that might do the math and decide that it's worth it to give up that 25% hit versus pay the several hundred extra dollars of gas to haul an RV up north. We'll wait and see, and I'll let you know how that pans out. Overall, both platforms, RV Share and Outdoorsy, have been pretty smooth and easy to work with, although we have encountered one glitch with RV Share, and that's with verifying drivers. So this is the typical situation that we see. We rent out to a lot of families, a lot of couples, and what happens more times than not, the wife does the booking, and when she's going through the booking process, she becomes a verified driver for insurance. But it's usually the husband that's driving, and for him to be a driver, he needs to be verified too through the process, so he's covered under insurance too. Well, when it's getting close to the RV pickup, we're looking at the paperwork, or we're looking through the app, and a lot of times we'll see the wife is verified, but the husband is not. So there's been a few times where we've reached out and said, well, we need to add your husband as the driver because we don't see it on our end. Well, they see it on their end. They've even sent a screenshot showing it, and it's just a weird glitch where they verified both drivers. We just don't see it on our end. A minor little problem, just creates a little extra back and forth that's not needed. Hopefully they'll take care of that soon. Otherwise, like I said, most of our renters have just been rock stars. We've had really good luck this year. Hope it continues. And we'll keep doing these updates. We'll try to do 1 or 2 every month as the season goes forward, and we'll keep you up to date on how it's going. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.